Hey y'all, what's up? Let me begin by saying that this story is very uninteresting and you should probably feel free to scroll by. Only 2 or 3 people are going to understand what I'm talking about in this video. So anyway, here's another story about nothing. I've made a video or 2 about this individual in my parts department, and he's a very annoying, self-important individual. So yesterday, I went to order parts for this machine that I'm working on, and I gave him the serial number, the model, and the brake, okay, the model brake number. And with this information, he should have been able to find what I needed. Now, when he brought the parts list up and we were getting ready to order, and I noticed that one of the things that I needed was a breather for the DEF tank and the hydraulic tank. And he saw that there was only a breather for the hydraulic tank. That should have been a clue for me to figure it out and realize that it wasn't the right parts list. But I just said, let's roll with it. I know what I need, just get me 2 of the breather and we'll worry about that later. Well, when I get my parts in, the breathers are not correct. They're foam breathers for the tank cap, and not the actual tank, and which means that the breather for the DEF tank is going to be wrong. I got 2 little foam rings instead of what I was supposed to get was breathers that look like that. All right, that's enough of that part of the story. So my assistant who's helping me, he's changing the hydraulic filter, and the hydraulic filter doesn't look like the hydraulic filter that came out of the machine. So I checked the numbers and there was no supersession, which means that that filter goes to another machine, and the filter that I need, he didn't order. So I went up to him to ask him, I said, did they pull the wrong part in the warehouse, or was it a mistaken keystroke and perhaps you didn't order the right part? So he gets a little snarky. He's like, well, I've been making orders all day and I don't know what I did. I was like, dude, we have the part numbers, let's just look. All right, so he looks it up and he brings up the parts list. The parts list is incorrect. And I said, and I need this for hold on, damn interruptions. Anyway, he's looking up the part numbers, and I noticed on the computer screen that it was for the wrong model machine. Well, that's the serial number that they gave me, and that's the serial number that I looked up. I said, yes, but I also gave you the information of the model and the model brake. There's a difference. The number that I need was for a -11, and he looked up parts for a -10, and he didn't seem to let that resonate with him. So I asked him, I said, I'm looking at the screen, is that the only part list you have? Well, I used the serial number that you gave me. I understand that. What this guy is being rigid and uncooperative because he's upset that he ordered the wrong parts. Now, our manufacturer sometimes assigns a serial number to a machine that isn't built yet. So sometimes that will fall under the different model number or the model brake, and so they might have meant to make it a -10, but it ended up being assigned to a -11. Sometimes you just cannot rely on the serial number. That's why you have 2 entirely different ways to identify a machine. And that's what I was trying to tell him. He didn't want to listen. So I said, look, man, I said, could you please look up a -11 and see the parts list? And lo and behold, when he looked it up and saw it was a -11, there was my proper filter. Of course, he got upset because he didn't want to be wrong. You got to understand something, man. I ask you to do your job. And then if you make a mistake and if there's some way to correct it, you just accept it and move on. There's a reason why they have these machines the way they have them. If you're looking at the computer screen, he's the guy that orders the parts. You're looking dead at the computer screen. I told you -11. You looked up the first machine that you saw and it popped up a -10. That part list was incorrect. you cannot get upset with me, and then you can't start bitching about the manufacturer because you were given alternate information. You can't just go off the serial number. And then we looked up the history. That serial number was also assigned to a wheel loader 3 models back and a different excavator 4 models back. So therefore, that serial number was not exclusive. So when you looked it up, and that's why you have to have the model break. How hard is that to understand? This individual is starting to get really on my nerves. He's only 62, which means he has 3 years before he can retire. And I am stuck with this person, and it's very difficult to deal with. I don't understand it. He's the guy that I told you that likes to go on walkabout to go down to the warehouse to see if those guys are doing their job correctly. Like, it's not your responsibility. Your boss is literally sitting 15 feet away from you. Why do you think it's your responsibility to go to the warehouse to see if those guys are doing their job? You are here to order parts for us, the service department, which means that you can't keep going on walkabout when somebody comes up to order parts. And then he gets upset when you order parts with one of the other countermen who are, I don't know, sitting at their desk doing their fucking jobs. This frustrates me to no goddamn end. Anyway, just another story about nothing. Y'all have a good one. Deuces.